day and welcome to Alena Media TV. We are broadcasting from Canada. I am Elsa Abraham, and in this episode we are bringing you African news. Here is your headlines. Ethiopia's next poll could be more competitive, but big challenges remain. And also as Eritrea, Ethiopia envisions readiness to use Eritrean ports. And in our last story, Egypt weighs UAE's mediation initiative in now diamond crisis. Let's go for a quick break. We'll be right back. Kindly stay with us. Welcome back from that short break. Now, Ethiopia is set to hold general elections for members of the federal parliament and regional councils on June 5th, 2021. It will be the 6th such elections and another chance for Ethiopia to transit to democracy. For many centuries, Ethiopia was ruled by a long line of absolute monarchs. The last emperor was overthrown by a popular revolution in 1974. However, the revolution was hijacked by a military junta that ruled the country until its overthrow in 1991. There was hope that Ethiopia would embrace democracy for the first time when the Ethiopian People's Revolutionary Democratic Front, a coalition of 4 ethnic political parties, took power in 1991 and introduced multi-party elections. This was not to be. The front conducted 5 sham general elections and ruled the country with an iron fist for 28 years. From 2016 to 2018, the coalition faced a popular uprising against increased human rights violations and massive corruption. It also faced an internal power struggle between reformists who sought the opening of the political space and those who wanted to maintain the status quo. The political crisis is climaxed in the exit of Prime Minister Haile Mariam Desalegn and entry of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed in 2018. The new optimism of a democratic transition springs from several important developments in the last 2 years. The government has taken political and legislative reforms that will contribute to a more competitive election. For example, the Electoral Board, which oversees the polling, has been re-established as an independent institution. Despite the upbeat expectations, the June elections face serious challenges. Ethiopia's party system is extremely volatile. Political parties are weak and fragmented, and the elections will take place amid the upheaval in Tigray, one of the country's 10 federal regions. Advances there are many reasons for the optimism. Firstly, several exiled opposition politicians and political parties are allowed to operate outside the country. Secondly, a new electoral law has set out new rules for political party registration. These have had the effect of pushing out a large number of weak and fragmented political parties from the party system. Previously, there were more than 130 political parties, many of which were weak and volatile. The majority were not active in elections and any political movement. The new law requires re-registration on the basis of standards such as proof of endorsement from voters and constituents. Alongside this, political parties that have previously been marginalized in the regional states of Afar, Benishangul-Gumuz, Harari, Gambia, and Somali are now part of the national political discourse. Thirdly, the National Electoral Board of Ethiopia is now accountable to the House of People's Representatives, the Federal Legislative House, and an insignificant compromise between the ruling and opposition political parties. A prominent former opposition politician and political prisoner was appointed by the House of People's Representatives in late 2018 to lead the board. Fourth, the Federal Supreme Court and the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission are now led by prominent professionals. Both worked for the advancement of human rights and social justice for many years, and a new law on civil society has made it possible for non-governmental organizations, professional associations and consortiums to engage in the advancement of human rights and democracy. This includes civic and voter education, capacity building for political parties, human rights institutions, and courts. Nevertheless, there are still serious challenges parties continue to exist that don't have strong links with voters and constituents. In addition, most of the political parties that make up the party system are regional and continue to be focused on ethnicity to mobilize supporters. The problem with this is that ethnic political parties use extreme ethnic propaganda to win the support of the ethnic groups they claim to represent. They are also unlikely to seek political compromises. Another challenge is the first past the post-election rule. The rule makes representatives of diverse interests and views on the federal and regional legislative organs difficult. Likewise, some leaders of opposition parties are in prison, limiting the diversity of views and interests that should be represented in the general elections. The lack of security in some constituencies poses as an additional challenge on the general elections. In the regional state of Tigray, the election for the regional council has been postponed by the National Electoral Board until security is improved and election polls are established by the provisional regional government. Also, the COVID-19 pandemic remains a threat against several aspects of the election process. This includes voter and candidate registration, voter education, organization of polling stations and constituencies, election campaigns and voting. Postponed ballots and fallout. The 2021 elections were originally set to be carried out on 29th August 2020, but they were pushed back by the House of People's Representatives because of the COVID-19 pandemic. This led to an extension of the mandate of the federal government that ran out on 5th October 2020. Both processes face criticisms from opposition politicians and political parties. The Tigray People's Liberation Front, the political party which governed the regional states of Tigray for over 30 years, opposed the extension. Moreover, the front refused to recognize the federal government beyond 5th October 2020. The front conducted its own regional election on 20th September 2020 and declared itself the winner. This was in violation of the federal constitution and against the mandate of the National Electoral Board. This action, however, led to the escalation of political differences between the front and the federal government. The Tigray People's Liberation Front had been on the coalition path with the federal government from the first day of its fall from a federal to regional power in 2018. In addition to that, the fact that the Tigray People's Liberation Front is an armed ethnic political group arguably made it inherently susceptible to resort to violence as a way of resolving political differences. The conclusion is that the upcoming state general elections are yet another historic chance for Ethiopia to hold free and fair elections through democratic competition. Ethiopia can avert conflict, strengthen its democratic institutions, and begin the transition of democracy. The elections are a matter of survival. This is published from the Conversations. Moving on to our next story for today, Eritrea, Ethiopia envisions readiness to use Eritrean ports. Ethiopia is executing due activities to reassess Eritrean ports of Massawa and Assab, whilst the Eritrean side is currently renovating the port's facilities to handle Ethiopia's shipments and provide seamless service for the future traffic, Ministry of Foreign Affairs said. Modamofa spokesperson Ambassador Dina Mufti told the press that Ethiopia's reuse of Eritrean ports is part of a comprehensive agreement Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and Eritrean President Isaias Afwerki concluded in the former's last week visit to Asmara. Dina further stated that Ethiopia and Eritrea move to economic integration would have a paramount importance to the peace and stability of the Horn of Africa. Apart from sharing borders and communities, Ethiopia and Eritrea were one of the states that is believed to be the main factor for the unique cultural and social bonds the two states have enjoyed. What's owned by Ethiopia is lacked by Eritrea, and what they have is not with us, he said, adding that Eritrea's extensive coastline avails a good opportunity to the land-locked Ethiopia's import-export trade. In our last story for today, Egypt weighs UAE mediation initiative in Nile Dam crisis. A Sudanese delegation headed to Abu Dhabi on February 26th for talks on the border dispute with Ethiopia as part of the mediation initiative announced by the United Arab Emirates. Sudan's cabinet announced on 23rd March its approval of the UAE initiative to mediate between it and Ethiopia to resolve their border disputes and the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, the Jerd crisis between Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia. This comes on the heels of a visit of a high-level Emirati delegation to Khartoum on January 13th. The delegation met with officials to discuss all this matter. The Emirati initiative, the details of which have yet to be revealed, comes amid the stalemate and repeated failure of the Jerd negotiations. It also comes in the light of heightened border tensions between Sudan and Ethiopia over the Al-Fashqa border region, which culminated in military confrontations earlier this year. Shefa Al-Afari, a writer and analyst specializing in African affairs, said that the Emirati initiatives comes at a critical time. It comes in light of military escalation across the Sudanese-Ethiopia border on an unprecedented Egyptian-Sudanese military cooperation and warnings of military intervention in the Jerd crisis, Afari told the press. In a speech with officers, non-commissioned officers and soldiers of the Bari military region on March 21st, leader of the Sudan's Transitional Military Council and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Lieutenant General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, stressed that the Sudanese forces will not retreat from their positions between the Sudanese borders with Ethiopia. For Addis Ababa, these positions are on Ethiopian lands. On 24th March, Ethiopian forces attacked the Sudanese forces on the border in an attempt to seize the territories controlled by Sudan. Egypt and Sudan also signed on March 2nd an agreement for military cooperation following the visit of Ethiopian Army Chief of Staff Lieutenant General Mohammed Farid to the Sudanese capital. Meanwhile, Egypt reiterated its position on the Jerd in the media statement to the talk show happening in Egypt on NBC Marshall on March 24th. Egyptian Minister of Foreign Affairs Shema Shokri said, "We have many scenarios on the table and they all are being assessed to choose the one that will most benefit us." This is where we end today's episode on African News. Please like, share, comment. Let us know your thoughts on this particular episode. Thanks for watching.